You ever seen something that made you stop mid-scroll, rewind, and watch again just to be sure your eyes weren't playing tricks on you? That's exactly what happened at a small but growing tech startup in downtown Atlanta. Imagine this. A big glass door swings open. A nervous-looking man in a slightly wrinkled shirt walks in, holding the tiny hand of a little girl wearing light-up sneakers and a glittery backpack. It's not take your daughter to work day, and this isn't some casual office visit. No, this is a job interview. And what happens next, let's just say, no one in that building was ready for it. Not the receptionist, not the other candidates, and definitely not the boss. But you're going to find out. That's why you're here. You want to know what went down, what this man did, and how one unexpected gesture changed more than just one person's day. It changed lives. Now, before we get into it, let me ask you something personal. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to show up strong even when everything inside you was falling apart? Where you had to smile, speak clearly, sit up straight, because someone was counting on you? If you've ever juggled responsibilities, if you've ever had to be a parent, a provider, and a dreamer all at once, then this story is going to hit home. And if you haven't, well, by the time you finish watching, you'll understand exactly what that pressure feels like. Because this isn't just a story about a man applying for a job. It's about dignity. It's about sacrifice. And it's about how one moment of grace, one decision, can flip someone's world right side up again. You clicked on this video for a reason. You saw the title and thought, why would a father bring his daughter to a job interview? What kind of boss would allow that? What actually happened in that room? And right now, your curiosity is tugging at you, isn't it? I get it. We're not just talking about resumes and paychecks here. We're talking about raw humanity, something we don't see enough of anymore, especially on social media where everything feels filtered, posed, and too perfect to be real. But this right here? This is real. No actors. No fake tears. Just a man trying to give his daughter a better future, and a boss who had every reason to say no but didn't. Now, here's where I want you to lean in a little. What if I told you this one small act of compassion unlocked a chain of events that would go viral on TikTok, break trending records on YouTube, and land in thousands of Facebook shares under the hashtag #InterviewDad? What if I told you this wasn't just an inspiring story, it was a wake-up call? See, we spend so much time online these days. It's easy to scroll past someone else's hardship without even thinking twice. But today, I want you to stop. I want you to see the world through this father's eyes. I want you to feel his heartbeat in those first nervous steps into that office. And I want you to stay with me until the very end, because the moment you've been waiting for, the part that'll make you rethink how you treat people, it's coming. And I promise it'll be worth it. Let's rewind for a second. His name is Marcus. Not some internet-famous guy, not a motivational speaker, just an ordinary man with calloused hands and a quiet voice. He used to work construction before the housing market dipped and projects dried up. Then it was odd jobs, warehouse gigs, late-night security shifts, anything to keep the lights on. He's a single dad. Wife passed a few years back. His daughter, Kayla, is 6. Smart as a whip, always asking questions, always watching. And Marcus? He's been trying his best to juggle it all. But lately, best hasn't been cutting it. Bills piling up. Rent behind. The kind of stress that makes your chest hurt in the middle of the night. And when he finally landed this interview, his first real shot at something stable in months, he couldn't find anyone to watch Kayla. Not friends, not neighbors, not even the lady at the community center, who sometimes helps out. So he did the only thing he could. He brought her with him. Now, before you start judging, think about this. What would you do if your child was your whole world and everything you did was to keep them safe? Would you risk looking unprofessional just to show up? Or would you stay home, lose the opportunity, and sink a little deeper into despair? Marcus didn't have the luxury to wonder. He put on his best shirt, packed Kayla a peanut butter sandwich and some crayons, and said a quiet prayer. The kind of prayer that doesn't ask for miracles, just a chance. When they walked into the office, all eyes turned. Some folks whispered. A few rolled their eyes. Let's be honest, people can be cold when they don't understand someone else's story. But not everyone in that office was quick to judge. And the man sitting behind the interview desk? The one with the clean-cut blazer, the gold watch, the sharp eyes? That's Mr. Thompson.
CEO.
The kind of guy who's seen it all. Built his company from nothing. Doesn't waste time. He looked up, blinked once, and paused. And in that pause, everything changed. But let me stop you right there. Because what he did next is the reason you're watching. It's the moment that turned an awkward interview into a viral headline. And no, it wasn't some PR stunt or corporate gimmick. It was something deeper, something human. And when you see it, you'll understand why millions of people shared this story, commented things like, "Faith in humanity restored," and even offered to help this man they'd never met. You're going to want to see it with your own eyes. But for now, just hold on to that image. A nervous dad, a bright-eyed little girl, and a powerful man behind a desk, all seconds away from something none of them could have predicted. And here's the thing. You're not just a viewer in this moment. You're part of this story, too. Because what happens next challenges all of us. How we treat people who are struggling. How we define professionalism versus compassion. How one small break can change someone's entire trajectory. So, don't click away. Don't miss the twist that'll make you say, "Wow, I did not see that coming." Because just when Marcus thinks the interview is about to end before it even begins, Mr. Thompson stands up, walks around the desk, and does something no one saw coming. Mr. Thompson didn't say a word at first. He simply walked over, looked Marcus in the eye, then knelt down to Kayla's level and offered her a juice box from the office fridge. That alone sent a ripple through the glass-walled room, because it wasn't just about kindness, it was about setting a tone. Marcus hesitated, unsure if this was a test, or maybe a trap dressed up as sympathy. You could see the flicker of doubt pass across his face. Should he thank him? Apologize? Leave? Kayla, on the other hand, simply smiled and said thank you in that high, sweet voice only kids have, as if this entire situation wasn't charged with silent judgments and ticking clocks. But what no one knew then, what Marcus couldn't have predicted, was that this moment would become more than just a test of character. It would unlock secrets buried deep beneath surface impressions, starting with Mr. Thompson himself. See, Marcus hadn't always been desperate. Not long ago, he was working steady hours, earning enough to make ends meet, and even taking Kayla to the community zoo on weekends. There had been laughter, dance parties in the living room, coloring books on the kitchen table. But things had started to crumble about 8 months earlier when the site he worked at suddenly shut down mid-project. Word was, the subcontractor had filed for bankruptcy, but rumors swirled of backdoor deals, bad permits, and even a scandal involving faulty materials. Nobody ever got a straight answer. Paychecks stopped without warning. And just like that, Marcus was out. No severance, no apology, no path forward. He tried to bounce back. Picked up work unloading delivery trucks at night, cleaning offices before sunrise. But those hours took a toll. On his body, on his sleep, and on his daughter. Teachers started calling, saying Kayla was quieter than usual, sometimes staring out the window instead of paying attention. The school counselor said she might be anxious, maybe even acting out from the instability at home. Marcus tried not to let it break him, but how do you keep standing when every direction looks like a dead end? He'd applied to dozens of jobs, real jobs, not just gig work. But interviews were few and far between, and every rejection letter felt like a silent accusation. Not qualified, not the right fit, too many gaps on your resume. The truth was, Marcus didn't have a college degree or a fancy LinkedIn profile. He had experience, years of it, but in a world obsessed with keywords and algorithms, experience wasn't enough. Still, when this interview opportunity came up through a career program for displaced workers, he told himself this time would be different. He didn't know it then, but the way this interview was about to unfold would be different, just not in the way he expected. Back in that room, tension hung like static in the air. Mr. Thompson motioned for Marcus to take a seat, then glanced toward the door and signaled something to the receptionist, something Marcus didn't catch. That's when things started to feel off. Kayla was settled on a small chair in the corner, happily scribbling in her coloring book. But Mr. Thompson didn't begin the interview right away. Instead, he asked Marcus an unusual question. Do you believe in second chances? It wasn't casual small talk. It felt loaded. Marcus answered the only way he knew how, honestly. Every day, he said, his voice cracking just a little. That's when Mr. Thompson's demeanor shifted. He leaned back in his chair, folded his arms, and stared for a beat too long. I ask because not everyone deserves one, he finally said. Some people blow it and expect to be rescued. Marcus wasn't sure what to say. Was this a trap? A moral test? The tension in the room tightened, and not just for Marcus. Something unspoken hung between the lines of Mr. Thompson's words, like maybe this wasn't just about Marcus at all. Maybe it was about something or someone else. See, what Marcus didn't know, and what you're about to find out, is that Mr. Thompson had his own complicated past. Years ago, his younger brother had been caught embezzling funds from one of Thompson's earlier ventures. The betrayal had nearly sunk the company and left scars that hadn't fully healed. The scandal never made major headlines, but whispers in the industry painted Mr. Thompson as ruthless, someone who doesn't forget, doesn't forgive. So when he looked at Marcus, a man down on his luck, walking in with a child and no backup plan, part of him bristled. Was this another sob story waiting to take advantage of him? But there was more. A lot more. Because that receptionist Marcus passed on the way in? Her name is Eliza. And while she seemed calm on the surface, something in her eyes said she recognized Marcus from somewhere. She couldn't place it at first, but she kept glancing over, trying to connect the dots. Later, she would quietly ask around the office, had anyone heard of a Marcus who used to work with steel frames? One of the interns would swear he saw a Facebook post years ago about a construction crew that rescued a kid from a collapsed shed. A hero named Marcus was mentioned in the comments. The details were fuzzy, but one thing was clear. This man might not be who everyone assumed. Even stranger, when Kayla got up to sharpen her crayon at the side table, she bumped into a framed photo on the wall. She stared at it a second too long. It was a group shot of the original company team, taken nearly a decade ago. In the back row was a woman with auburn hair and a bright smile, Mr. Thompson's late wife. Kayla turned to Marcus and whispered, "Daddy, she looks like the nice lady who helped me at the shelter." Marcus froze. He'd never brought Kayla to that shelter more than once, and he never remembered seeing anyone there who looked like that. Could Kayla have confused someone else for her? Or had Mr. Thompson's wife lived a double life no one in the company knew about? This is where the mystery starts to crack open, because once Kayla said that, Eliza's curiosity turned into suspicion. She started digging. That same afternoon, she ran a quick online check on Marcus's name and found something peculiar. A dated newspaper article, buried deep in the archives, about a workplace accident years ago. A crane collapsed during a public project near a local school, and one worker had pulled 2 students out before paramedics arrived. That worker was never officially named, just described as a tall black man in a red hard hat. But in the comments beneath the article, comments that had long been forgotten, one person had tagged a name, Marcus J. Whitmore. The pieces were starting to fit, but they weren't aligning neatly. Why had no one ever heard this side of Marcus's story? Why was his resume so bare when his life had clearly been filled with sacrifice and resilience? And what did Kayla's memory mean in the bigger picture? Was it just the imagination of a child? Or had she seen something no one else had? And perhaps the most chilling question of all, why had Mr. Thompson signaled the receptionist when Marcus arrived? Was it really to fetch juice or to run a background check? As the interview unfolded, every word between Marcus and Mr. Thompson felt like a move in a high-stakes chess match. Compliments were double-edged. Questions were traps. And somewhere between the creased papers and polite nods, a quiet battle was brewing. One between what people appeared to be and who they truly were. The deeper you looked, the more you realized that everyone in that room had secrets. Marcus wasn't just there for a job. Mr. Thompson wasn't just there to hire. And Kayla might have held the key to something none of them could have seen coming. But just when you think the pieces are falling into place, the office door swings open again, and someone walks in who turns the whole thing on its head. And that is where everything starts to unravel. The moment the door opened, time seemed to slow. Marcus instinctively turned his head, expecting maybe another late-arriving candidate or someone dropping off files. But the figure that stepped in carried an energy that shifted the entire room. It was a woman, no older than 35, with sharp eyes, a tailored gray suit, and a badge clipped discreetly to her belt. Her name tag read D. Herrera, Corporate Security. She didn't acknowledge Marcus or Kayla right away. Instead, she approached Mr. Thompson, whispered something close to his ear, and handed him a manila envelope thick enough to raise eyebrows. Mr. Thompson didn't open it immediately. He nodded once, his expression unreadable, then glanced across the room at Marcus and smiled, but it wasn't the warm, reassuring kind of smile. It was tight, measured, the kind of smile that hides more than it shows. Herrera left without another word, but the air in the room had changed. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something had just shifted behind the scenes, something crucial, and probably not in his favor. Mr. Thompson looked down at the envelope, tapped it twice against the desk, then slid it into a drawer without opening it. That was strange in itself. If it was important enough to interrupt an interview, why hide it away? Marcus couldn't ask. He had no idea what was inside or what it meant, but deep down he could tell whatever that folder held, it had something to do with him. After the interview ended, cut short without explanation, Marcus was politely told they'd be in touch, the kind of empty phrase every job seeker learns to fear. As he and Kayla walked to the parking lot, a low fog had started to roll in over the asphalt, and the office windows behind him glowed dimly, as if they were watching. Something wasn't right. Kayla held his hand tighter than usual, and when they got into the car, she asked, "Why did the man put the picture away?" Marcus blinked. "What picture?" he asked. She looked confused, then said, "The one of the lady on the wall. He took it down when we were leaving." Marcus turned back to the office, but the window was already dark. He hadn't seen anyone touch the photo. Later that night, back in their small apartment, Marcus couldn't sleep. His mind kept returning to the envelope, the photo, the strange question about second chances, and that creeping sense that someone was watching him. Around midnight, he logged onto a job forum, searching for anything about Mr. Thompson or the company. What he found buried deep in an old comment thread stopped him cold. Someone had anonymously posted a warning about the firm. Don't trust the man in the corner office. People disappear from his books. No name, no date, just that cryptic line. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The next day, hoping to find some clarity, Marcus stopped by the city records office to look up information on the building site where he used to work, the one that had shut down under suspicious circumstances. He figured if he could find some evidence of wrongdoing, maybe he could tie it to his own credibility and show Mr. Thompson he wasn't just another out-of-work dad. But when the clerk pulled up the file, something strange happened. The file existed, but it was flagged as restricted due to ongoing litigation. Marcus frowned. Litigation? Against who? The clerk just shook his head. Can't say, sir. All sealed. But someone filed that restriction only 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. That was exactly when Marcus had first submitted his application to Thompson's company. Confused and suspicious, Marcus returned to his car and was startled to find a small white envelope tucked under the windshield wiper. No name, no address, just the words, "Stop digging, for her sake." His stomach dropped. He looked around, scanning the street, the nearby cars, the office windows. No one. Nothing. Kayla was at daycare, safe for now. But this wasn't just about a job anymore. Someone didn't want him looking into the past. And now he had no choice but to dig deeper. That night, he pulled out a box from the back of his closet. Old paperwork, photos, and notes from his construction days. At the bottom was a flash drive he hadn't seen in years. He had kept it as a backup for worksite logs and blueprints, just in case. Plugging it into his computer, he opened a folder labeled Northfield Redevelopment, the name of that halted project. Inside were documents, site permits, photos of structural frameworks, and something else, an audio file he didn't remember saving. He clicked it. Static at first. Then a familiar voice. "This is Marcus Whitmore, site supervisor. I'm recording this in case something happens. The steel beams we received today aren't rated for what we're building. I told Davis, but he said not to worry. Said it came straight from the top. I'm not comfortable signing off, and I won't put my name on it. If anything goes wrong, someone needs to know we were forced to cut corners." Marcus sat back, stunned. He had completely forgotten that he'd recorded anything. Davis was the foreman on that job, and he had vanished after the site closed. Just stopped returning calls, never collected his last paycheck. Some said he moved away. Others weren't so sure. And now Marcus had proof that the project had been compromised, and that people knew. People like Mr. Thompson. Before Marcus could copy the files, his screen flickered, then went black.
Just like that.
Total shutdown. The drive was gone, unreadable. He tried restarting, unplugging, reloading. Nothing. It was as if someone had remotely wiped the system clean. That's when it hit him. This wasn't just corporate negligence. This was something bigger. Someone had eyes on him. Someone powerful enough to bury projects, restrict files, erase digital records, and threaten a single father into silence. He sat in the dark for a long time, trying to decide what to do. Call the police? Go public? But what proof did he have now? The recording was gone. The city files were locked. And even if he spoke out, who would believe him? Another unemployed dad making wild claims about a respected business leader? But the story wasn't over. Because the next morning, Kayla came home from school with a drawing she'd made in class. "It's the man from the picture," she said. Marcus looked closely. It wasn't Mr. Thompson. It wasn't anyone he recognized. But something about the face, it looked familiar. And in the corner of the drawing, Kayla had written a name neither of them had spoken in years. It was Marcus's younger brother. A name he hadn't said out loud since the day he disappeared after a family argument, right around the time of the construction accident. What did Kayla know? How did she even remember his face? And just like that, everything Marcus thought he understood was flipped upside down. The next day, as Marcus tried to piece together everything that had happened, a strange sensation tugged at him. It was something that had been nagging him for hours, like a whisper in the back of his mind, but it wasn't until Kayla's teacher called that the full weight of the situation came crashing down. The message was simple enough. "We need to talk about Kayla." Marcus felt his stomach twist. He hadn't thought much about Kayla's day at school, but now, with everything unfolding around him, his anxiety surged. He immediately agreed to meet after school, telling himself that it was just a misunderstanding. But as he parked outside the elementary school, he couldn't shake the feeling that things were spiraling out of control. What if someone else knew too much? What if they were targeting Kayla next? When he walked into the principal's office, Mrs. Lawrence, her face tight with worry, motioned for him to sit. "It's about the drawing," she started, handing him a sheet of paper, the same one Kayla had shown him the night before. The one with his brother's face on it. But this time, there were additional details that hadn't been in the drawing earlier. Kayla had drawn an image of a house, a familiar house, the old family home. But more unsettling was the figure in the foreground, a shadowy outline of a man, standing in front of the house, almost as if he was guarding it. There was no mistaking it now. This was a place Marcus had tried to forget, a place buried deep in the back of his mind. The house where his brother had last lived, before everything fell apart. "I don't know what to make of it," Mrs. Lawrence said quietly. "Kayla mentioned something about the House of Secrets. And when we asked her to elaborate, she got very upset. She told us that someone was trying to hide the truth. Is there something you want to tell me, Marcus? I'm just worried about her." His heart hammered in his chest as he tried to keep his composure. There was no way Kayla could have known about that house. He had never spoken of it to anyone. Not even his closest friends knew the full story. And yet here it was, right in front of him, in his daughter's innocent drawing. Was this some kind of coincidence? Or was someone planting these memories in her mind? As he left the principal's office, Marcus's mind raced. He knew he needed answers fast. But the more he thought about the strange drawing, the more it didn't add up. How is it possible that Kayla had access to that memory? Had someone been feeding her information, or was it something deeper, something Marcus had no idea existed? The unsettling thought lingered. What if his brother wasn't dead? What if, instead, he had been involved in something dangerous all along, something that tied back to that house, and maybe even to the company Mr. Thompson ran? Later that afternoon, As Marcus returned to his apartment, he noticed something different. The door was slightly ajar. A chill ran down his spine. He wasn't paranoid. Something was off. He pushed the door open slowly, scanning the room for any sign of a break-in or a disturbance. The apartment looked normal, except for one thing. On the coffee table, there was a single photograph. A photo he hadn't seen in years. It was a picture of Marcus and his brother, smiling in front of the old house, taken on their last day together. But there was something scratched out in the corner of the photo, something deliberately erased, almost like someone had tried to hide part of the image. The more Marcus stared at it, the more he realized there was something familiar about the way it had been defaced. It was almost as if someone was trying to erase the truth, piece by piece. Just as he reached for the photo, his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. Hesitant, he answered. Marcus Whitmore? The voice on the other end was low and urgent. If you care about your daughter, you'll stop asking questions. You're treading into dangerous waters. You've been warned. The call ended abruptly, leaving Marcus with more questions than ever.
Who was on the other end of that line?
And why was someone so determined to silence him? That evening, after another sleepless night, Marcus couldn't ignore the nagging feeling that something was unfolding beneath the surface, something far bigger than he could comprehend. He began going through his brother's old things, searching for any clue that could make sense of this mess. He found old letters, documents, and a few tapes of their conversations when they were younger. But one tape, in particular, caught his attention. It was marked with a date that lined up with the week his brother disappeared. The recording was distorted, hard to understand, but the words he could make out sent a shock through him. They can't know what's buried beneath the house. It's too dangerous. I'll be back soon, Marcus. But if I don't make it out... The tape cut off abruptly. Marcus's hand trembled as he sat back. His brother had known something. He had uncovered something that had put him in danger. And it seemed like the past wasn't staying buried. It was coming back to claim them both. But as Marcus started to rewind the tape, he noticed something even more disturbing. The sound of footsteps, faint but distinct, just before the tape cut out. It was as if someone had been in the room with his brother when he was recording this message. Someone who didn't want that truth to get out. A chill swept over Marcus as he realized what he had just stumbled upon. His brother hadn't just disappeared. He'd been silenced. The next day, Marcus received another unexpected message, this time from his old friend Rachel, who worked at a local law firm. She was shaken when she called him, her voice strained. Marcus, I've been looking into your brother's case. I shouldn't be telling you this, but there's something you need to know. It's about the house. Your brother wasn't just working on some construction site. He was part of a bigger operation, something connected to Thompson's company. And I think I've found the link between your brother and that mysterious project you've been investigating. But Marcus, her voice faltered. I think they know I've found something. I've been followed. Someone's watching me. Marcus didn't know what to think. Rachel was always cautious. If she was scared, then the stakes were higher than he'd imagined. Someone, somewhere, was pulling strings, and Marcus was now caught in the middle of a game he didn't understand. The walls were closing in. Every answer led to more questions, and every person he spoke to seemed to have their own agenda. The danger was escalating, but Marcus knew one thing for sure. He couldn't back down now. He had to protect Kayla. And to do that, he had to uncover the truth, no matter how deep it went. But what if the truth was more dangerous than he could have ever imagined? What if everything he thought he knew was just another layer of the lie? As the days passed, the pieces of the puzzle only became more fragmented, and Marcus was running out of time. His next move was critical, because someone was determined to make sure the past stayed buried, and they weren't going to stop until Marcus was silenced for good. The tension in Marcus's life had been building for days, but it wasn't until the morning he saw the unfamiliar car parked across the street that he truly understood the magnitude of the danger he was in. At first, he thought it was just coincidence, perhaps a neighbor had a visitor, or maybe it was just a random vehicle. But when he caught sight of the driver's face, hidden behind dark sunglasses, motionless, staring directly at his apartment, the hair on the back of his neck stood up. Something wasn't right. The unease he had been feeling for days had turned into cold dread. He'd been careful, constantly checking his rearview mirror when driving, making sure to avoid predictable patterns in his routine, but the feeling of being watched never fully left him. And now it was real. The car was an omen, and Marcus knew it wasn't just a random person passing by. It was a threat, a clear signal that someone knew more than they should. The hours that followed were a blur of paranoia. Every car that passed, every footstep in the hallway, every knock at the door sent Marcus into a heightened state of alert. He told himself to stay calm, to be rational, but the thoughts swirling in his mind were anything but calm. His brother's mysterious disappearance, the cryptic messages, the threats, everything was spiraling out of control, and now this. He felt like he was being sucked into a nightmare, a dark hole with no way out. He tried to focus on Kayla, who was playing in the living room, but even her innocent laughter seemed distant now, like a cruel reminder that the normal world was slipping further away from him. By the time the sun set, the car was still there. He'd watched it all day, unable to shake the feeling of being suffocated by the weight of his own thoughts. And then it happened. Kayla had been asleep for a while, and Marcus was pacing around the apartment, his mind racing, when he heard the faintest knock at the door. He froze, his heart hammering in his chest. It wasn't a loud knock, but it was sharp, purposeful. He slowly approached the door, his hand trembling as he reached for the handle. When he opened it, there was nothing. No one on the other side. Just the cold, empty hallway. But on the doorstep, there was something he hadn't expected. An envelope, dark and sealed with a wax stamp. His pulse quickened as he bent down to pick it up, inspecting the strange seal. It didn't look like something anyone would use for ordinary correspondence. He hesitated, staring at the envelope for a moment, then tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, and written on it, in thick black ink, were 3 words: "Stop.
Now."
Before. That was it. No signature. No explanation. Just those words, hanging in the air like a silent threat. The chill that ran through him was unmistakable. This wasn't a warning. It was a direct order. And it made him realize just how far he had gone off the path, how deep into the shadows he had ventured. Whoever was behind this wasn't playing games anymore. They weren't just watching, they were hunting. It wasn't just the message, though. It was the timing. The fact that this envelope had shown up at his door just moments after he had seen the car across the street, the same one that had been watching him all day, sent a jolt of icy fear down his spine. Whoever was tracking him wasn't just making threats. They were watching his every move. They knew when he was vulnerable, when he was distracted, when he let his guard down. They were close, and they were calculating, waiting for the right moment to strike. He didn't know what to do. Panic threatened to overtake him, but he forced himself to think logically. He needed answers, but he also needed to keep Kayla safe. He couldn't let her become part of whatever dangerous web he had accidentally stepped into. But that was easier said than done. His mind raced through every possible scenario, every person he could trust, but the truth was, he didn't know who was on his side anymore. Rachel had been the one person he thought could help him, but now with a phone call from her about being followed, he wondered if even she was safe. In that moment, a sudden noise from the living room broke his thoughts. It was a sound he hadn't expected, Kayla calling out to him. But it wasn't just her voice that sent a shiver down his spine. It was the desperation in her tone, the way she said, "Daddy, someone's at the window." His heart skipped a beat, and he rushed into the other room, barely breathing as he saw her standing in the middle of the living room, her small hand pressed against the glass of the window. She was pointing at something, but when Marcus looked, he saw nothing. No figures, no cars, just the dimming twilight outside. But then, he noticed something even more disturbing, a shadow in the reflection of the glass, just behind Kayla. It was there for only a moment before disappearing, but it was enough to confirm his worst fear. Someone was watching them, and they were closer than ever before. Marcus grabbed Kayla, pulling her away from the window, his thoughts racing. He had to get them out of there, but where could they go? Who could he trust? He had no answers. Only fear. He quickly packed a bag with the essentials, his mind moving in 1,000 directions at once. He needed to call Rachel, but before he could reach for his phone, it rang. The name on the screen made his stomach drop. It was Rachel. He answered quickly, desperate for her help, but what she said made his blood run cold. "Marcus, it's not safe to talk. They know. They're watching me too. I can't get out. Please, you have to." The call cut off abruptly. Panic surged through him. He tried calling her back, but the line went straight to voicemail. No one was answering. He stood there for a moment, feeling utterly helpless, the weight of the situation crushing him. Whoever was behind this, whoever was making all these moves, was now taking control of everything. And Rachel was in danger. Worse, the realization hit him that Kayla, and he might be next. As the silence of the apartment pressed in on him, Marcus's mind raced. Who were these people? What did they want from him? And most importantly, how had it all gone so wrong so fast? His thoughts were scattered, but one thing was clear. His life was no longer his own. It was a game now, and he was trapped in the middle of it. The door creaked open. Was it just the wind? Or had someone else entered the apartment? The seconds felt like hours, and with every breath, the room felt smaller, more suffocating. Time was running out. The apartment was dead silent when Marcus turned slowly toward the sound of the door creaking. He was sure he had locked it, and the thought of someone breaking in sent a cold shiver down his spine. His pulse raced as he gripped the handle of the bat he kept by the door. Every nerve in his body screamed to be ready for whatever, or whoever, was behind that door. He approached cautiously, his heart hammering in his chest, and as he pushed it open, he expected to find someone there, ready to confront him. Instead, it was Rachel. Standing in the doorway, pale and shaken, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were wide with fear, and there was something different about her, something off. She was supposed to be the one person he could rely on, the one person who knew the truth about what was going on. But as she stepped into the room, her face barely registering the shock of seeing him, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The way she looked at him, almost like she was seeing him for the first time, sent a ripple of confusion through him. "Rachel, what the hell is going on? Where have you been?" Marcus asked, trying to mask the frustration that bubbled up inside him. He wanted answers. He needed answers. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked past him and took a seat on the couch, her movements slow and deliberate, like someone who is carefully considering their next words. Marcus stood there, waiting, his mind racing. What was she hiding? Why was she acting so strange? Finally, she spoke, but her voice was distant, almost as if she wasn't speaking to him at all. "You need to understand, Marcus," she said softly, her eyes not meeting his. "This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't want it to go this far." His confusion deepened, and a knot formed in his stomach. "What the hell are you talking about?" he demanded, his voice rising. "What's going on? Why is someone following us? Why are we being threatened?" Rachel's eyes flickered to his, and for a split second, he saw something that stopped him cold, a flash of guilt, a hint of regret. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared, and she looked down at her hands, fidgeting nervously. "Marcus, I wasn't just helping you," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I've been a part of this from the beginning." His heart dropped. The words hit him like a punch to the gut, and for a moment, he couldn't breathe.
What? What are you talking about?
He couldn't even finish the sentence. Rachel took a deep breath, looking as though she was about to confess something much bigger. "I'm not just a bystander in all of this. I've known about the plan from the start. The whole thing, the threats, the car, the messages, it's all part of something much bigger." I'm sorry, Marcus. I didn't know it would go this far. I thought I could control it, but I was wrong. The room spun around him as Marcus tried to process her words. His mind struggled to catch up with the truth that was being revealed, but all he could do was stand there, his jaw clenched, staring at her. She wasn't just some innocent bystander. She was involved in the very thing that had been tearing his life apart.
But why?
Why would she do this? Why would you do this to me? To Kayla? He asked, his voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disbelief. We trusted you, Rachel. You were my friend. She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. I didn't want to,
But I didn't have a choice.
You're in this deeper than you think. I never wanted you to find out. If you hadn't gotten so involved, if you hadn't dug too deep, none of this would have happened. But now it's too late. Marcus's mind was spinning. The revelation shook him to his core. Rachel, his trusted ally, was not who she claimed to be. But even more chilling was the realization that the mysterious threat, the hidden figures watching him, the cryptic messages, they were all part of something far bigger than he could ever have imagined. There was a network at play here, one that stretched far beyond what he had seen. Rachel's involvement meant that someone had orchestrated this entire game from the start. And she had been a part of it all along. Just as Marcus opened his mouth to demand more answers, the room was plunged into darkness. The power cut out, leaving them in complete blackness. Panic surged through him as he fumbled for his phone, only to find it dead, no power, no signal. The silence was deafening, and every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. And then, through the darkness, a faint sound, footsteps. Slow, deliberate steps coming closer. Marcus's breath caught in his throat. It was coming from the hallway. Someone was approaching, and it wasn't just Rachel this time. Suddenly, the front door slammed open with such force that the hinges groaned. A tall figure, silhouetted against the faint light from the hallway, stepped into the apartment. Marcus's heart skipped a beat as the figure moved closer, their presence heavy with menace. He couldn't make out their face, but the way they carried themselves, like someone who knew exactly what was going to happen next, sent a rush of dread through him. Rachel stood up slowly, her face ashen. I told you it was too late, she whispered. They're here. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a face Marcus never thought he would see again. It was his father, the man who had disappeared years ago without a trace.
But there was something wrong about him.
His eyes were cold, calculating, as if he had become a completely different person. The words caught in Marcus's throat. His father? But that couldn't be right. How was this possible? And then, the truth hit him like a freight train. This whole twisted nightmare, the messages, the dangers, the threats, it had all been set in motion by someone he thought he could trust. Someone close to him. Someone who had been playing him from the very beginning. His own flesh and blood. Everything Marcus thought he knew was a lie. The weight of the revelation hung heavily in the room, and for a long moment, Marcus couldn't bring himself to speak. His father stood before him, his gaze cold and calculating, every inch the stranger he had become over the years. The man he had once called Dad, his protector, his guide, was now standing in front of him like a ghost, a shadow of the person he thought he knew. And Rachel, the one person he had trusted above all others, stood beside him, her face full of regret but devoid of any answers. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating, until Marcus could barely stand it anymore. His mind raced, each thought spiraling out of control, trying to make sense of the chaos that had invaded his life. But no matter how he tried, nothing made sense. Why, Dad? Marcus finally choked out, his voice breaking with emotion. Why didn't you tell me? All these years. I thought you were dead. I thought I was alone. His hands clenched into fists, his entire body trembling with the weight of betrayal. What's going on? What did you get me involved in? His father didn't flinch, didn't look the slightest bit remorseful. Instead, he took a slow step forward, his eyes narrowing with that same icy calculation that had always been a part of him, part of the reason Marcus had always been in awe of him as a child. You're not alone, son, his father said, his voice a low, menacing drawl. Not anymore. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest as his father's words settled over him like a dark cloud. What does that mean? He took a step back, his mind struggling to understand the implications. Why bring me into this mess? Why put me in danger? Why did you fake your death? The man's lips curled into something resembling a smile, but it wasn't warm, it was cold, as if every word that came from his mouth was calculated to hurt. Because you're not just some random guy, Marcus. You're special.
You were always meant to be part of this, even if you didn't know it.
Your mother, he paused, almost savoring the moment. She didn't want you to know the truth. She thought it was better if you lived your life in the dark. But now you're in too deep to back out. There's no going back. Marcus felt a sickening knot tighten in his stomach. What was his father talking about? And what had his mother known that he didn't? His mind began to spin again, but before he could ask another question, his father raised a hand, silencing him. You have a choice, Marcus, his father said slowly, his tone deliberate. You can walk away from this. Walk away from everything, from me, from Rachel, from whatever it is you think you know. But if you do, you and your loved ones, Kayla, Rachel, everyone, will be at risk. You won't be able to protect them. You'll be exposed, just like we all are. The ultimatum hung in the air like a heavy fog, and Marcus's thoughts were racing. Walk away and leave his loved ones to face the consequences of what had been set in motion. Or stay and fight, even if it meant uncovering more dark secrets he wasn't ready to face. His father's words cut through him like a knife. The tension in the room was unbearable, and as much as Marcus wanted to scream, to demand answers, he knew he couldn't. His father wasn't just making a threat, he was speaking the cold, hard truth. If Marcus walked away, the people he cared about wouldn't be safe. And that was something he couldn't ignore. But the thought of staying in this twisted, dangerous web, trusting people who had already betrayed him, was enough to make his stomach turn. Rachel's face was unreadable as she stood silently beside his father, her eyes shifting nervously between them. She had been in this for longer than he knew, longer than he ever realized, and now it felt like she was the one person who had the answers, but she wouldn't speak. The silence between them was suffocating. Was she still on his side, or had she been working with his father all along? Marcus took a deep breath, the air thick with the uncertainty and tension that swirled around him. He didn't know who to trust anymore. His father had been lying to him for years, faking his own death, and now he was demanding that Marcus make an impossible choice. But Rachel's betrayal felt like the sharpest sting. She had always been his rock, the one he turned to for support. Now, she was standing there, as complicit as his father, and the weight of that hit him harder than anything. Why didn't you tell me the truth, Rachel? Marcus's voice was quieter now, but there was no mistaking the hurt and betrayal laced within it. Why didn't you warn me about what I was walking into? Rachel's face fell, her eyes filling with regret. I didn't know how to, Marcus. I didn't want to lose you. I never wanted this to happen. But you did it anyway, he shot back, his voice thick with emotion. You lied to me. You let me walk right into this mess. I thought I could control it, she said, her voice trembling. I thought I could keep you safe from all of this. But now it's out of my hands. It's bigger than both of us. Marcus's mind was reeling. He was stuck between two people, his father, the man who had been part of something much darker than he could have imagined, and Rachel, the one person who was supposed to be his ally, his friend, now standing in front of him, admitting that she had been part of the deception all along. The choice before him felt impossible. The clock was ticking, and he had no idea who was truly on his side. As the silence stretched on, Marcus's thoughts circled back to the ultimatum. Walk away from everything he knew, protect the people he loved, or stay and face the truth, no matter how ugly it might be. Each option seemed worse than the last. He was caught in a web of lies, betrayal, and danger, and no matter which path he chose, there would be consequences. His father was right about one thing. There was no going back. But even as the weight of the decision settled over him, the questions kept piling up. What was the truth? What had his mother known? What was this larger plan that his father had been hinting at? And who could Marcus really trust in the end? The answers were still out of reach, but the danger was already closing in. He had to make a choice, but the fear of making the wrong one was paralyzing. His father's cold eyes bored into him as he waited for Marcus's answer, and the tension in the room was palpable. Marcus felt like he was drowning in uncertainty, unable to see a way out. Whatever he decided, there was no turning back. The tension was suffocating. Marcus could feel the blood pounding in his temples, his breath shallow as the gravity of his father's words settled deeper in his mind. This wasn't just about him, wasn't just about the lies they had been telling him. The conspiracy, this web of secrets and lies, was far more expansive than he could have imagined. It wasn't just his father. It wasn't just Rachel. It was bigger, far bigger than anyone had let on. The truth was far more dangerous than he could have prepared for. "Dad, you're telling me this is all planned?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper, but the weight of his question echoed through the room. He had thought this was a twisted family drama, a few bad choices, a few too many lies. But no. He was beginning to understand, beginning to see just how deep this ran. His father's icy stare didn't falter. "You think this is just about you? About me? This is bigger than any of us, son. The whole operation goes back decades. There are others involved. People you don't know, people you trust. This is a well-oiled machine. There's a reason why your mother kept you out of it. She tried to protect you, but there's no escaping it now. It's too late." His father's words cut through Marcus like a knife. His head was spinning. How could he have missed this? The late-night meetings, the hushed conversations. The subtle hints Rachel had dropped over the years that he had dismissed as paranoia. Who else is involved? Marcus demanded, his heart racing as the pieces slowly began to fall into place. But as he opened his mouth, Rachel's expression changed. The mask of guilt she had worn earlier shifted into something darker, something guarded, calculating. "Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly, but holding an edge. There was something different about the way she looked at him now. Was it fear? Or something else? Had she been involved in this the whole time, and was it all just a game to her? Marcus didn't know who to trust anymore. He turned back to his father, his frustration boiling over. "You're telling me I've been a pawn this whole time? In a game I didn't even know I was playing?" His father didn't respond immediately, instead watching him closely, almost like he was waiting for Marcus to come to terms with it himself. "It's not that simple," he said finally. "You're not just a pawn. You're a key player. You always have been. The question is, what are you going to do with that power? With that knowledge?" Marcus felt the walls closing in on him. Power? What the hell was his father talking about? Was this all about control? Had Rachel been part of this? Had she played him like a fool all this time? Power. Marcus repeated, his voice rough with disbelief. "What the hell do you want from me?" Before his father could respond, Rachel stepped forward. "He's not wrong," she said softly, her eyes locked on his. "You're not a pawn, Marcus. But you're also not a king. You've been living a lie, and now you're part of something much bigger than you think. There are people watching us right now. People who know everything. And there's no escaping them." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "Watching us? What the hell are you talking about?" She didn't answer immediately, but her gaze flickered to the door, as if she were worried someone might be listening. Marcus's pulse quickened. The room felt smaller, suffocating, as if there were invisible eyes everywhere. "You've already been marked," Rachel continued, her voice low and tense. "There are people who won't let you walk away from this. Not now. Not after what you know." Marcus's heart slammed against his chest. His mind raced. Marked? What did that mean? So what? I'm stuck in this? Trapped. Rachel nodded slowly, her face pale. "You don't understand. The moment you found out the truth about your father, about everything, there's no turning back. You've been drawn into a much bigger world than you know." It hit him like a punch to the gut. The people he trusted most, the ones he thought would protect him, had all been playing him. His father, Rachel, they had both been part of this, part of something he couldn't yet grasp. There were shadows everywhere now, everywhere he looked. And there was no way out. The weight of it all crushed him. The lies, the betrayal, the danger lurking just beyond the walls. It was more than he could bear. But there was one thing that stuck with him. Rachel's face. The way she had said there were people watching. It wasn't just a warning. It was a threat. The hairs on the back of Marcus's neck stood on end as the realization hit him. Someone else was pulling the strings. Someone who knew everything. The game was never about his father, never about Rachel. It was bigger than that. They were just the players. And Marcus? He was the target. Before he could ask any more questions, the sound of a loud crash outside the door made his heart stop. His father's eyes darted to the sound, his face tightening. "Stay here," he ordered in a voice that left no room for argument. But Marcus didn't listen. He had to know what was going on. He had to see for himself. As he pushed open the door, the hallway was dark, the only light coming from a single flickering bulb. His senses were on high alert, the hairs on the back of his neck standing up. There were muffled voices, a shuffle of footsteps, and then the unmistakable sound of a car door slamming shut. Marcus's breath caught in his throat as he looked down the hallway and saw a figure stepping into the shadows, disappearing into the night. It was then that Marcus realized the full scale of this operation. It wasn't just his family. It wasn't just Rachel. It was a network, a system of people, all with their own hidden agendas, and Marcus was at the very center of it. He wasn't just in danger, he was being hunted. The magnitude of it all hit him like a tidal wave. It wasn't just his life on the line. It was everyone's. Everyone he loved. And it was clear now that there was no way to stop it. No way to outrun it. The conspiracy was everywhere, and Marcus had just become its next target. The tension in the air was palpable as Marcus stepped cautiously into the abandoned building, his heart thumping wildly against his chest. It had all come down to this moment. The truth was within his grasp, just beyond the threshold of this darkened room, and yet it felt as though the walls were closing in on him. Every instinct told him to turn back, to run, but he couldn't. Not anymore. Too many lives were at stake. Too many secrets had been buried, and now they were all coming to the surface. He took a deep breath, steadying himself as he pushed open the door, the creak echoing in the silence. The room was dimly lit, with just a faint glow from an old desk lamp in the corner. At the far end, his father stood, face shadowed, staring at a pile of old files spread across a desk. Marcus's pulse quickened. This was it. He had finally tracked down the source of all the lies, the man who had orchestrated everything. Marcus. His father's voice broke through the stillness, cold and calm. There was no warmth, no remorse, just a chilling acceptance in his tone. "You should have stayed away. You have no idea what you're up against." Marcus's jaw clenched. "You've been lying to me, to all of us for years. Everything, every part of my life was a lie."
Why?
"Why did you drag me into this?" His father didn't flinch. "You were always meant to be a part of this, Marcus. From the moment you were born, it was decided. You're the missing piece. You're the one who can make everything fall into place." The words hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. He had always thought he was just a son, just a person living his life. But now, he was learning that his entire existence had been manipulated, controlled from the very start. The magnitude of what his father was saying sank in, and he felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over him. "I was a pawn. A tool for your game. For what? Power? Control?" His father's eyes narrowed. "Not power, Marcus. Freedom. You wouldn't understand, but one day you will. The world we live in, it's all a facade. Everything you think you know is part of a much larger system. This is how the world works. How it's always worked. You were meant to help bring it all down. And now, you're the only one who can fix it." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of the twisted narrative his father was feeding him. This wasn't just about family. It wasn't just about trust. It was about something much bigger, something far darker than he had ever imagined. "You're insane," Marcus spat, taking a step back, his breath coming faster. "I don't care about your system. I don't care about any of this. You can't force me into your world. I'm not like you." For the first time, a flicker of emotion passed through his father's eyes, something like regret, or perhaps sorrow. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by a steely determination. "You don't have a choice, Marcus. The moment you found out, you became part of it. You've already crossed the line." Just then, a sharp noise shattered the tension, an unexpected sound from the shadows behind him. Marcus spun around, his heart skipping a beat. From the darkness emerged Rachel, her face pale, her hands trembling as she stepped into the faint light. "You didn't have to do this, Marcus," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You don't understand. There's no other way. There's no escape." Marcus felt the sting of betrayal hit him again. Rachel had been a part of this. She had known everything from the start. But why? Why had she gone along with it? And why was she suddenly speaking like she had been a victim too? "I had no choice," Rachel continued, her voice breaking. "I tried to protect you, tried to warn you. But it's too late now. They've already made their move. The conspiracy, it's everywhere. It's inside every corner of your life. You've already been marked. Just like me. Just like your father." Marcus felt like the world was closing in on him. The walls, the voices, the truth, it was all too much. He couldn't breathe. "You're saying there's no way out? No way to stop it?" Rachel shook her head, her eyes filled with regret. "No, Marcus. You can't stop it. No one can." His father stepped forward, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. "There's no escaping it, son. You've been groomed for this role. And whether you like it or not, you're going to play your part. You're the key to making everything work." The words echoed in Marcus's mind. He wasn't just a victim. He was a player in this sick game. His entire life had been shaped by forces beyond his control, forces he didn't even understand. He had always thought the world was just a series of events, a collection of decisions that led to this point. But now he realized he had been walking a path set out for him long before he had even known it existed. And then, just as Marcus was about to speak, a loud crash came from the other side of the room, followed by the sound of heavy footsteps approaching. His heart skipped a beat. Someone else was here. Someone who wasn't supposed to be. The door slammed open, and in walked a figure that Marcus never expected. It was Detective Williams, the very same officer who had been investigating his family's involvement in the shadowy dealings for months. His hands were raised in the air, a smug look on his face. "You didn't think I wouldn't figure it out, did you?" he said, his voice dripping with satisfaction. "You thought you could keep all of this hidden, but it's time for the truth to come out." Marcus felt his blood run cold. Williams wasn't just a detective. He was part of it. He was part of the conspiracy. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. His entire life, every step he had taken, every decision he thought was his own, had been manipulated by forces far more powerful than he had ever realized. And now, Williams was here to finish the job. But just as quickly, Marcus heard the unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked behind him. He turned to find Rachel, her face pale but resolute, her finger on the trigger. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I never wanted this. But it's the only way." Before he could react, a shot rang out. Everything went black. The darkness slowly faded, replaced by a soft, blinding light that poured into Marcus's consciousness. He didn't know how long he had been out, but when he finally opened his eyes, he was no longer in the abandoned building, no longer surrounded by the chaos of betrayal and conspiracy. His head throbbed, and his chest felt tight, but he was alive. That much was certain. The room around him was sterile, white, and quiet, too quiet. It took him a moment to realize he was in a hospital, and even longer to remember everything that had happened. Rachel's face lingered in his mind, as did his father's cold stare and the shock of Detective Williams's true allegiance. The gunshot had felt real, too real, and the fear of not knowing if he would wake up again was something he couldn't shake off. He didn't know if it had been Rachel who had pulled the trigger, or if someone else had intervened. But there was one thing that kept nagging him: the conspiracy. It was bigger than anything he had ever imagined. It was far-reaching, insidious, and relentless. And it didn't stop because he had been knocked out or because the immediate danger was gone. It was always lurking, waiting for its next move. The door opened with a soft creak, and Marcus's eyes snapped toward it. A nurse entered, her face a mask of professional calm. She didn't seem surprised to see him awake, though Marcus couldn't recall how long he had been unconscious. "You're lucky to be alive," she said softly, as though she had seen this scenario 100 times. She adjusted his foredrip and checked his vitals, speaking without much emotion, but there was a faint glint in her eyes, a recognition, perhaps, of something more. "Do you remember what happened?" she asked, her voice gentler now. Marcus's mind reeled. He tried to focus, but it was hard. I don't know. Everything's a blur. I remember. Rachel. My father. A shot." His voice trembled, but he steadied himself. Is everything over?" The nurse hesitated for a moment, her fingers moving faster as she adjusted his medication. "It's never over," she said, and for a fleeting second, there was something about her words that made Marcus feel uneasy. She gave him a small smile before stepping back. "You'll be okay. Just rest now." As she left, Marcus lay back, his mind spinning with fragments of the puzzle that still didn't fit. Who had been behind it all? Was it really his father, or was someone else pulling the strings? What had Rachel meant by, "it's the only way"? There were too many questions that lingered in the air, unanswered, leaving a weight on his chest that no amount of sleep could erase. Weeks passed before Marcus was able to fully regain his strength, and in that time, the investigation into his family's activities continued. The police had their answers, or so they claimed. His father, the mastermind behind the web of lies and manipulation, had disappeared, gone without a trace. There were rumors, whispers about his involvement with high-level organizations, far beyond what Marcus had ever thought possible. Yet, as much as the authorities wanted to close the case, something about it didn't sit right with Marcus. He had seen too much. He had heard too much. And despite everything, he couldn't shake the feeling that the conspiracy was far from over. Rachel, too, had vanished. After the incident, she was never seen again. No one knew where she had gone, and no one seemed to care enough to ask. It was as if she had never existed in the first place, a mere footnote in a much larger narrative. But Marcus couldn't forget her, not the way her eyes had looked at him just before the shot had been fired. He had trusted her when no one else had. And now, her disappearance left a hole in his heart, a constant reminder that nothing in his life had been what it seemed. The hardest part for Marcus, though, was coming to terms with the truth about his father. It turned out that his father had not been acting alone. There were others, powerful figures from within government and corporate circles, who had been pulling the strings, and they were still out there, waiting for the right moment to act. Marcus's father had been one of many pawns in a much larger game, and while his death had ended one chapter of the story, it didn't bring closure. It only opened the door to more questions, more fear, and more uncertainty. Months passed, and Marcus tried to rebuild his life. He took a job with a small law firm, distancing himself from the shadow of his family's name. He tried to live a life of normalcy, to forget the fear, the lies, and the betrayal that had consumed him. But even in the quiet moments, when he thought he was alone, he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was still out there, watching, waiting. Then, one day, as he was clearing out some old boxes in his apartment, Marcus came across something that made his blood run cold. It was a single, unopened letter, addressed to him in handwriting he recognized immediately, his father's handwriting. He felt a chill as he tore it open, his hands trembling. Inside, there was just one sentence. "The truth is far bigger than you think. Don't trust anyone." Marcus sat back in his chair, staring at the words as the world seemed to spin around him. The air in the room grew thick with tension, the past crashing down on him like a wave. He had thought he had escaped it, thought he had left it behind, but the truth was clear now. The game was never over. It was always waiting, lurking in the shadows, ready to pull him back in. As the days passed, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that someone or something was keeping tabs on him. And though he tried to move on with his life, the weight of the letter, the mystery, and the chilling words of his father hung over him. It was a reminder that some stories, no matter how hard you try to leave them behind, never truly end. And somewhere, deep in the corners of his mind, Marcus knew the conspiracy wasn't finished. The question was, Who would be the next one to fall victim to the darkness? And would he be able to stop it before it consumed everything he cared about? As the screen fades to black, one final image lingers in the viewer's mind. Marcus, looking out the window, his face shadowed by doubt, as the faint outline of a black car pulls up outside and someone watches from the street. The story isn't over, far from it. It's only just begun.